Like Chip said, my name is Tim Judson. I'm the Associate Director with the Nuclear Information and Resource Service. I'm also the President of the Board of Citizens Awareness Network, which is the grassroots nuclear watchdog group in the Northeast. And NERS, has obviously a lot of input to provide on the waste confidence rule. NERS has been one of the primary nuclear watchdog groups in the U.S. For the last 35 years. We've seen the evolution of this regulation throughout that time, and we believe, obviously, that the waste confidence rule should be withdrawn, and want to provide our thoughts on that. My comments today will primarily be confined to addressing the rule itself. We'll have a lot more detailed input on the generic environmental impact statement, which will be delivered in written form and verbally at the November 14th meeting. But want to address, really the proposed action, which is to essentially reinstitute, the waste confidence rule. And we believe that this regulation is completely out of date and out of touch with reality. And this is, with no disrespect to the work of the NRC staff that have prepared these documents and the Federal Register notices of the proposed action. I think what we've seen, what I've experienced over the last several weeks in these sort of public input meetings in various settings has been some disconnect between the public's comments with regard to NRC actions and the reception of those comments by NRC staff, feeling that the public is being overly critical of their own work. I want to be clear that we're talking that, in regards to my comments today, we're talking about the actions of the Commission, and the Commission as an agency, not the work of individual staff. But to this point, to address the waste confidence rule. This rule has only ever served one purpose, which has been to streamline the licensing process for nuclear facilities, particularly nuclear power plants. And in fact, that's stated very clearly in the documents that we're here to comment on today. And I want to sort of begin with that, begin with the stated purpose of the proposed action and the waste confidence rule. And I'm reading here from the generic environmental impact statement, although similar, nearly verbatim statements are made in the other documents as well. The purpose and need for the proposed action are threefold. To improve the efficiency of the NRC's licensing process by generically addressing the environmental impacts of continued storage. 2, to prepare a single document that reflects the NRC's current understanding of these environmental impacts. And 3, to respond to the issues identified in the remand by the court in the New York versus NRC decision. Now, to address these, it was entirely unnecessary for the Commission to go back and reinstitute the waste confidence rule. First of all, the second stated purpose here, to prepare a single document that reflects the NRC's current understanding of nuclear waste storage, doesn't require a rulemaking. That could be done in any other kind of technical document or environmental impact statement. And the third one, to respond to the issues identified in the remand by the court did demand that the NRC do a more thorough, credible evaluation of the consequences of nuclear waste storage after a reactor license expiration. That doesn't require the reinstitution of a waste confidence rule. The court was clear that it didn't say that the NRC shouldn't do that, or that it wouldn't be allowed to do that, but it's certainly not a necessary implication of the court rule. And in fact, the very basis, the very underpinning for having a waste confidence rule has essentially been invalidated by reality at this point. The very term waste confidence is based on a notion that the NRC is confident that nuclear waste has a solution. And there's really no policy basis or factual basis for that as a matter for streamlining the licensing process of nuclear reactors in this country at this point. The history of how we arrived at this point is well summarized in the documents that we're here to comment on. And going back to the passage of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, which initially mandated that the Department of Energy cite or come up with recommendations for citing 2 repositories in this country for the permanent disposal of nuclear waste. And over a few years, it became clear that that was too hot of a political potato for the nation to manage. And the law was revised to require the siting of one repository and capped the amount of waste that could be stored in that repository until a second one could be cited. And then a few years later, when it became more clear that that was going to be such a heavy political lift, they just the requirement for citing it for DOE recommending a second repository site was stripped entirely. And so we were left with one proposed site, Yucca Mountain, capped at a capacity of 70,000 metric tons of nuclear waste. And that's been a process where we've been stuck until it became clear that the Department of Energy needed to withdraw its application for a license because the facility was too controversial, did not have the political support necessary, and there were massive technical problems with the site. So we arrived at 2010, and the federal court case is filed that ultimately won out and forced the NRC to withdraw the waste confidence rule as it was revised after the demise of Yucca Mountain. We're 60 years into the nuclear experiment, and we've not been able to cite a single repository in this country to store nuclear waste. And with respect to the statutory limit on the capacity of even the first repository at this point of 70,000 tons, according to the generic environmental impact statement, that amount of waste is already being stored in reactors across the country. So we've already filled the first repository before it's even been built. And so now, going forward with the licenses the NRC has already issued, based on the estimate that in the GEIS that we generate 2,000 metric tons of spent fuel every year in this country going forward, we've essentially already filled the second repository. It's to be built at the same capacity. So all the licenses that would be issued going forward would be essentially for what we must presume at this point would be a third repository. And the Nuclear Waste Policy Act has never even contemplated building a third repository, even though we know if we generate that waste, we're going to need to do something with it. So the basis on which the NRC would reaffirm a waste confidence rule for issuing new licenses going forward is completely unrealistic and doesn't speak to the reality. And in fact, in the proposed or the considered alternatives to the proposed action, the first one is taking no action, not reinstituting the waste confidence rule. And what's the consequence of that? Not that the NRC couldn't license reactors anymore, as is its mandate under the Atomic Energy Act, but just that it would have to evaluate the impact of generating nuclear waste in each and every one of those proceedings. And NERS feels that that is the appropriate course of action to be taken. We don't know what to do with this waste. There's no guarantee that there's any way to dispose of it. And the risks that have been identified are so great that would be the best course of action. I do want to make one final point, which is to the assessment of risk in this rulemaking. And one of the fatal flaws in what's been proposed, in the discussion of risk that we've been having today, is that the risk is evaluated in a generic environmental impact statement that is going to be used to streamline the licensing process of an unknown number of facilities that could be licensed under it. The risk that's assessed is for a single facility. And as I assume from the answers I got to my earlier question today about how the risk was calculated, whether it was based on a sum total of all of the potential causes of a spent fuel pool fire in the 60 years post-license, it would assume that it seems clear that the risk that's been assessed by the NRC staff doesn't even deal with the potential consequence of the rulemaking itself, but only of licensing each individual facility. And that seems completely, irresponsible if the agency moves forward on that basis.
Okay, Tim, thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for tying that.
My name is Ken Curtin. I'm here on behalf of the Clean and Safe Energy Coalition, also known as Case Energy. The Case Energy Coalition is a large national grassroots organization that brings people from business, academic, environmental, labor, consumer, and other advocacy groups together. Our members support the increased use of nuclear energy to ensure an environmentally clean, safe, affordable, and reliable source of electricity. Now, I'd like to start by thanking the NRC for holding this public hearing today, and particularly the hard work of the staff has done and is doing. It's been a long afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. It's important that we make sure that nuclear energy facilities across the country are allowed to do what they've been doing, and that is producing much needed, clean, safe, and efficient electricity. I am here to express my personal support and confidence in the storage of spent nuclear fuel on site at nuclear facilities. The industry has shown over the course of decades that it is committed to the responsible, safe, and secure storage techniques on site. And we all know that on-site storage was never intended as a permanent solution, but we also know that the industry has gone to great lengths to make on-site storage a safe and secure process. These structures meet the rigorous requirements that the NRC has already laid out, and the industry has invested billions of dollars and thousands of man-hours over the last few years in making these facilities safe and secure. In addition to a commitment to the safety and secure storage on-site of spent fuel, the industry is also a vital part to securing our future environmental health. Just last week, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, released their updated executive summary on climate change, and they found with 95% confidence that humans are behind climate change. The report also found that the surface temperature is likely to rise by 1.5, or in 2 cases more than 2 degrees Celsius, which is considered beyond tolerable and into the danger zone by the end of this century. Nuclear energy provides 19% of our electricity, but more than 2/3 of our emissions-free technology. This means that nuclear energy provides more clean air energy than every other source of emissions-free technology we have right now. At a time when we're looking at how we can address the threat of climate change, nuclear energy is already our best ally in this fight. Not only is it the largest source of clean air energy, it's an extremely reliable form of baseload, always-on power. As the NRC continues these series of public hearings, I would just like to reiterate my support for an industry that has shown it can safely and securely store spent fuel on site, and has shown this for decades. While other sources of energy pump harmful greenhouse gases, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxide, and mercury into the air, nuclear energy doesn't emit any of these. Rather, the nuclear energy industry has shown that it can safely, securely, and cleanly store spent fuel on site. As the NRC considers this and future issues, I would encourage them to think about what it can do to strengthen our nation's commitment to clean air technology. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kenneth.